A magic weapon could have all sorts of effects. These effects included increasing sharpness, boosting the abilities of the one equipping it, or dealing additional damage. At this stage, from a weapon standpoint, it was possible to say Palpatra had a huge advantage. Now, that can be true. The gap between them one be filled by a weapon, and Momon's armor seems more enchanted than Palpatra's. The items he has equipped are probably more magical too. Overall, there's either no gear gap, or Momon is ahead. Don't be too hasty. Haven you heard the rumor that the total value of the magic items Palpatra uses surpasses what adamantite rank adventurers can afford. He has fulfilled tons of requests over the years. He has probably earned the most rewards in the entire empire. Now wait you wait. As the two of them chatted on, the combatants' will to fight hit critical mass, and the battle began. Okay, here I come. Come at me, sir, but don't overdo it. This is an important job without letting him finish. Palpatra, charged with elegant power and speed, one would never expect from an 80-year-old man. Meanwhile, Momon didn't even hold up his staff. Dragon Tooth thrust. Hecarin's eyes widened. Palpatra didn't hesitate to use a martial art for his opening move. He whipped his spear, thrusting to deliver two piercing strikes, like dragon fangs. The attack included a special effect that dealt additional attribute damage. This was a more advanced version of drill thrust, which Palpatra had developed over 40 years ago. Known for its good balance, the martial art had been learned by many fighters. The type of dragon tooth thrust he used was blue dragon tooth thrust to deal additional lightning damage. What was that old man thinking? Sure, he had access to healing magic, but he still wouldn't normally do something like that in a friendly spar. Even grazing someone clad in metal armor with a lightning-imbued martial art would be extremely effective. The choice showed Palpatra was going all out. Though the attack should have been troublesome for a warrior wearing metal, Momon nimbly dodged it. Despite his raven black full-plate armor, he moved so lightly it was like he had wings. More surprisingly, he didn't jump out of the way or make any large movement. He evaded it completely while barely moving from where he stood. No way, I can imagine what his dynamic visual acuity and physical ability must be. Wind acceleration. Palpatra used another martial art. You're overdoing it, you old fart. Did your age hit your brain? Dragon tooth thrust. He assaulted Momon again with the same art as before. This time the tip of the spear was imbued with snowy chill, a white dragon tooth thrust, a total of 4 chain moves in less than the space of a breath. The spectators were stunned. Of course they were. Not a single one of the attacks so much as grazed Momon's armor. Palpatra jumped way back. The beads of sweat on his forehead weren't from exerting his body to attack. They were from the immense mental pressure of wielding his spear in a battle he couldn't win. Wow. He is even stronger than you, Hecarin. Of course he is, Arch. Don't even compare me to him. That's what an elite adventurer is. He is at the very top. That is the power of an adamantite rank. So is it my turn now? Momon held up his staff and pointed its tip at Palpatra's eyes. Meanwhile, the spear Palpatra had been grasping was now leaning against his shoulder. It wasn't a combat stance, but the stance of someone who no longer had the will to fight. He'd given up. Magnificent. Stop. I can't even scratch you. Oh. At Palpatra's declaration of surrender, the onlookers sent up an admiring moan. Woah. Momon was truly overpowering. The gap in strength might as well have been that between an adult and a child. He'd shown them that vividly. Everyone who had watched began chatting, sharing their impressions, wondering what school of footwork he used to dodge, and so on. Leaving them, Hecarin and Gringham approached Palpatra, who was wiping the sweat from his forehead and talking with Momon. You already finished, sir. His tone and manner had changed abruptly. Weren't you about to get serious? Higher. What a thing to say to an old man like me. I was being serious. That was me being serious, Sir Momon. Oh, please excuse me. Oh, please don't apologize. I'll feel even worse. You don't have to stand on ceremony with me. We should assess each other based on strength, not years lived. It feels quite awkward to be treated with so much respect by someone as overwhelmingly strong as yourself. I see. Then I'll relax a bit. By the way, stopping here is pretty dissatisfying for me. If there is a next time, I'll attack first. Anyhow, I have to load the wagons, so I'll be going now. Why not let the others load the wagons? That is not a job for you, is it? No, I disagree. No matter what status you hold, when you're given a job, you should do it well. With that, Momon walked back toward the wagons, and the peerless beauty followed behind him. The two who arrived, just as he was leaving, ended up watching him go, his broad shoulders higher. "You look like you want to ask something. What did you think of him, sir?" Palpatra's wrinkled face screwed up. It might have been a bitter smile, but it seemed like something else as well. "He's strong." "No, I knew he was strong because he's adamantite rank. I just had no idea he was this strong. The second we faced each other, I had the feeling that no matter where I tried to hit him, he would block it." Hecarim had felt the same thing, that Momon would easily stop and counter all his attacks. Even if things went according to plan, that armor would repel all the attacks anyway. That was all he could imagine. Palpatra, who had faced him directly, must have experienced the feeling more intensely. So that's adamantite rank, yep, that's adamantite. He is a being in a realm only a handful of people will ever reach. Ah, he really is magnificent, beautiful. That's a height I'll never make it to. You must be pretty satisfied having seen it, though. Truly, I have a better understanding of how you both move after watching that match. It would have been impossible to observe so calmly if I had been the one facing him. Apologies, sir, but I really wanted to see Sir Momon attack. Impossible. He seem very interested in attacking me. He had no desire to fight. Probably it is as he said, that he is not good at holding back. He probably thought hitting me would kill me quickly. If that were true, some might have found it arrogant. Palpatra was a fairly skilled warrior, even though he was old. It could be argued that Momon had underestimated the veteran without even seeing what he could do, but the reason he could do that was because he was an adamantite rank adventurer. Well, can T be helped? The gap in our abilities is just that big. It was frustrating at first, but even if he stuck to defense, once he dodged everything I threw at him, I couldn't really say anything. They'd been shown the meaning of strength. He had chosen a weapon he wasn't used to. It had a totally different heft and balance. He did this because he was that confident. The gap between the two men was significant. Palpatra walked off, mumbling, "I am beat, so tired." He was headed, of course, for the covered wagons. As Hecarim watched him go, he heard a quiet voice. "I couldn't make it to that realm even in my younger days. So that's adamantite so high above me." Palpatra's shoulders looked small. In comparison, Momon looked enormous. They could sense his power. So that's the most elite rank, adamantite, yeah, just amazing. There was no lack of people who agreed with their admiring comments. A single carriage raced like the wind over the cobblestones of the imperial capital, Arwinthal. Pulling the resplendent carriage was an 8-legged magical beast known as a Sleipnir. 2 able-bodied warriors were seated in the box, and on the roof, the cargo bed had been renovated. Crouched 4 people, including a caster and a warrior with a crossbow, keeping an eye on their surroundings. Naturally, the reason this rolling defense force, a security detail that was arguably overkill, could go openly down the street was due to the standing of the people inside. One look at the crest of 3 cross staves carved on the side of the carriage was enough for someone with a little education to know whose carriage it was and who was inside. That was why the knights guarding the street didn't challenge them. Inside the carriage were 3 men. Their robes made them look like casters. All 3 were well-known names in the Empire's magic world. However, their attitudes clearly indicated a hierarchical relationship. The most superior of them had white hair. Just as Gazov Stronov was known far and wide as a warrior, this elderly man was the most famous caster in the region. He was the great caster, the strongest, most elite in the Empire Triad, caster Fluda Paradine. Sitting across from him were 2 of his leading disciples. They were so skilled they had good command of Tier 4 magic. Though they had just left the Imperial Palace, an oppressive silence ruled the atmosphere. One of the disciples cautiously spoke, unable to bear it any longer. "Master, what do you intend to do about His Imperial Majesty's order?" Silence reigned over the carriage once more. But it didn't last long. Fluda answered in a voice that was profound and quiet. "It is His Imperial Majesty's wish. As a retainer, my only choice is to carry it out and investigate. It is too dangerous to try with magic, so we'll start by sifting through the records. Then we'll summon demons to gather intelligence." "You don't know him then, Master?" Fluda closed his eyes and waited a few seconds before opening them again. "Alas, I do not. I've never heard of this immensely powerful demon, Jaldabaoth. The previous month, a horde of demons had attacked the capital of the kingdom. As far as he had been able to gather, Jaldabaoth and the demon maids who attended him were terrifying beings. They might as well have been from another dimension. Due to this demon disturbance, the order of imperial knights who attacked the kingdom every year hadn't marched. Usually, invading when one's enemy is exhausted is the proper way to wage war. But there were two main reasons the Empire was invested in this fight. One was to exhaust the kingdom. While the Empire had a standing army, the kingdom's troops were conscripted. For that reason, whenever the Empire mobilized soldiers, the kingdom had to mobilize even more. The kingdom was at a disadvantage when it came to the quality of individual soldiers. The Empire timed their attack for the harvest period. This forced the kingdom to draft farmers. As a result, they would have a shortage of able hands in the fields. The long-term plan was to make the crops go to waste. Another reason for the campaigns was to chip away at the power of the nobles within the empire. Nobles who opposed the emperor were made to pay funds via special war tax. Naturally, if they refused, their families were ruined for suspected treason. In the end, it was only a difference of being tortured slowly or killed swiftly. The reason the empire hadn't moved this time was that the Emperor Jerkniv had judged that since the kingdom had done them the favor of wearing themselves out, it was unnecessary for the empire to do anything. Besides, the empire's nobles in the opposition had already lost most of their teeth. There was just one problem. Where was Jaldabaoth, the perpetrator of those truly demonic deeds, and what kind of being was he? Both of those things worried him. It was only natural that Fluda, the most capable caster in the empire, would be tasked with investigating. Then there's the one who routed the demon, Momon of Raven Black, and his companion, beautiful Princess Nabe. I am very interested in them. And the mysterious caster Aints Ul Gaun. Have the retired heroes been stirring? Perhaps a war as fierce as the one with the evil spirits 200 years ago is about to begin, is it? I don't know, but only a fool prepares for war after it breaks out. A wise man makes arrangements in advance. Soon the carriage reached its destination. Spacious grounds were enclosed by a thick, high wall. Several watchtowers guarded both the interior and exterior. Mixed patrol groups of select knights of the 8 orders of Imperial Knights, the most elite being the First Order and casters, were making their rounds. Looking up, the Emperor's personal guards mounted on magical beasts, the Imperial Air Guard, and elite casters on watch using flying spells could be seen. This place was the symbol of the Empire's power. They'd been pouring most of that power into it since the previous Emperor, the Imperial Ministry of Magic. The soul of the Empire's magic activities, manufacturing the enchanted arms provided to the knights, developing new spells, performing experimental research to improve the standard of living with magic, and so on could be said to reside here. And the one in charge of it all, although he wasn't Minister of Magic, was Fluda. The carriage proceeded across the grounds. Eventually, it stopped before the tower at the farthest reaches of the compound. They had passed by a variety of differently shaped buildings on their way. A great many people were bustling in and out of all of them. Only this tower had hardly any visitors. Its security, oddly enough, was incomparably tight. For starters, the knights guarding this tower looked different. They were knights of the First Order, like the ones patrolling the grounds. Enchanted full-plate armor enclosed their bodies head to toe. They held enchanted shields in their hands. Enchanted weapons were slung on their hips. Their crimson capes, featuring the imperial crest, were also enchanted. The magic those items were imbued with wasn't strong, but even the Empire couldn't outfit ordinary knights with this much magic gear. More than anything, mere knights wouldn't be assigned to guard one of the Empire's critical agencies. They were the most elite knights. Therefore, they belonged to the Emperor's personal Imperial Earth Guard. The casters next to the knights were just as impressive. They had fought in many battles and honed their combat skills. They seemed every bit as powerful as the veteran warriors. The entrance to the building was additionally fortified with 4 stone golems. These golems were easily over 8 feet tall. They fulfilled their guardian duties with no food, rest, or distraction. Only the more advanced Tier 3 casters were allowed in this place. In rare cases, research casters with specific errands were also permitted. Of course, Fluda and his 2 leading disciples had entry permission. He returned the knight's and caster's deepest bows with a light wave of his hand. Then Fluda entered the tower. He and his disciples followed the hallway straight back. They emerged at the top of a funnel-shaped space. Many casters were working there industriously. The one who seemed to have the highest status hastened over to Fluda, flustered. "Anything?" "Nothing, master." The disciple swallowed, and his Adam's apple undulated. His response was both good and bad news. Nodding just once with a subtle expression, Fluda turned to look at the deputy head of this place. He was one of the famous chosen 30, the 30 disciples Fluda taught personally. "I see. So you can't get them to spawn naturally yet?" "No, we still can't get even skeletons of the lowest tier to appear spontaneously. Now we're experimenting to see if we can get zombies to spawn by placing corpses nearby." Fluda stroked his long beard and gazed at the scene below. There were a little over a dozen skeletons working in the fields. They raised their hoes and plunged them into the dirt. The movements of each skeleton were exactly the same. Looking from the side, they all overlapped. They looked like a single monster. This scene of utter synchronization, like a group of people doing aerobics together, was the Empire's huge, secret project, Undead Labor. Undead needed neither food nor sleep, and they never got tired. They were the perfect workers. Certainly, they had low intelligence. They couldn't do anything beyond what they were ordered, and nothing too complicated. But that could be solved by giving them detailed instructions from nearby. The benefits of unleashing undead on farmland with orders to execute were unfathomable. By lowering labor expenses, the price of produce would decrease. Farms and fields could be larger. Injuries could be prevented. This project was truly dreamlike. Similar plans using summoned monsters or manufactured golems had been proposed, but undead were the most cost-effective. Naturally, there was a reason they couldn't execute this perfect-seeming plan on a large scale. Opposing forces, led mainly by the priests, were against it. They argued that giving orders to embodiments of death, the antithesis of life, sullied the soul. There were other, even more religious reasons as well. They argued that from a spiritual standpoint, using even the corpses of criminals was desecration. Once their punishment had been carried out, their souls were wiped clean. That was problematic. Perhaps if they had been in the middle of a food shortage and many people were starving to death, the ministry would have had more leverage. As it stood, however, the Empire had a great supply of food. There were no signs of labor issues either, and so the priests opposed the project. The ultimate goal was stronger soldiers. If the Empire relied on undead to meet production capacity, they could use their human resources for other things. This might lead to the discovery of powerful knights. There were also concerns that human workers would be laid off if undead labor became the norm. People worried whether undead would really obey humans forever. There were fears that with countless undead around, the balance between life and death would collapse. Stronger undead might then spawn spontaneously. These were things not only priests, but anyone who heard about the plan would think. This facility existed to verify each concern and solve the problems. You haven't discovered the fundamental cause. No, my apologies, Master. Why did undead spawn naturally? Their pursuit of the answer had major implications for the future. The Katsi Plain was known as a cursed land. It was covered by a mist that only cleared during the war between the kingdom and the Empire. The spawn rate there was so high that skeletal dragons, one of the most powerful undead, could appear. These dragons were capable of neutralizing all magic spells. Even if the Empire eventually conquered Rantel and its environs, they didn't want an expanse of land where undead were constantly popping into existence in their territory. Knowing the process by which undead spawned would surely be useful for governing the area. Perhaps they could stop them from spawning ever again. I see. Understood. The deputy bowed, relieved there was no rebuke. Fluda set off, walking around the outside of the funnel-shaped room. By the time he reached the door on the opposite side, the number of leading disciples behind him had grown. The knight guarding the door pushed it open for them. The party continued inside. It was another hallway similar to the previous one, but this one was completely empty, not a person to be seen. The air smelled dusty. The light seemed to be in a losing battle with the darkness. Proceeding straight down the eerie corridor, they came upon a spiral staircase extending below. They passed through several doors on their way, but their clacking footsteps didn't echo for very long. They went perhaps 5 floors down, but the air seemed much heavier than that. It wasn't simply because they were underground. This much was clear from the hard expressions born of anxiety worn by everyone in the party, including Fluda. Their faces were grim as they reached the deepest floor, a large open space. The atmosphere was so tense they were practically bracing themselves for combat. Everyone's sharp eyes were gathered on the single thick door. This door was so imposing it seemed to divide worlds. It was fitted with layer upon layer of physical and magic defense, so it wouldn't break or open easily. It was a door that would not permit escape. The doors they had passed through on their way here also hinted at the danger lurking in the depths. They'd been built as barriers. If the threat behind this thick door made a move, they could seal it away or at least buy time. Fluda spoke in a hard voice to warn his disciples. Don't let your guard down. His words were brief and to the point, which made them terrifying. The casters accompanying him all bowed low.